Afternoon, everybody. My name is Ahsan Khan. I'm Director of Research and Innovation for the Active Building Centre. This is probably the easiest job I've got to do over the 3 days, which is introduce Keith Waller. Keith is Programme Director for the Construction Innovation Hub. He will be talking about his programme and what they are doing to stimulate the modular manufacturing and construction sectors. And I believe he's got a 30 or so minute presentation and then 15 or so minutes for Q&A. So please do bank those questions and we'll come to them at the end. Please, Keith, if you'd like to join on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Ahsan said, my name is Keith Waller and I run something called the Construction Innovation Hub. And what I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes to half an hour is talk about what our programme is, what we've done to date, what I think the next steps are and how I want to be engaging better with industry to help support the delivery of our programme. Now, we're all aware of a number of drivers of change that have been talked about over many reports over many years within the sector. And if you just think purely about the capital phase of construction projects, you can see the graph on the left-hand side looks at productivity growth across a number of sectors of the economy over the last 20 or so years. And we see one or two sectors like manufacturing that have invested very heavily in digital, in their processes, in automation, who've seen quite good productivity growth over that period. Whereas the overall economy, which is I think the thick blue line, has been fairly flat as a whole. But below that, bumping along perhaps the worst of a bad bunch, is our sector, construction. So we know that there's a productivity problem in construction, but the fault doesn't necessarily lie with construction companies. There are a number of drivers of why we behave like we do, and part of it is linked to how we are procured, how we're incentivised, how we're contracted, how clients set out their requirements, how they want to transfer risk, how they want to drive sometimes for cheapness rather than looking to deliver better value. And there's a number of bits of analysis, a number of reports that have been written by industry and by government that have set out these problems over the years. And one of the things that we've done in the Construction Innovation Hub is gone through a process which we've called government discovery, which is where we have done some analysis of all the previous reports that have been produced over the last 20 years, and we've done some interviews with government clients from a range of different departments and government agencies, just to try and understand, are all these hypotheses correct? Is it poor procurement? Is it a lack of investment in innovation? What is the thing we're doing with skills that's perhaps causing one or two problems? And we wanted to make sure that in our programme, as part of the wider Transforming Construction Challenge, that we were addressing those things that were actually going to make a difference. So we're not judged on producing reports, we're not judged on producing a technical solution, we're judged on delivering impact. I want to talk a bit about that impact and how we move forward. But we've developed a number of different strands of work based on this discovery, based on talking with industry, based on engagement with academia, based on conversations we've had with government about what are those issues that government could be doing in terms of how they set out their policy, how they get their funding frameworks, how they procure, how they contract. What are the things that industry could be doing to support that as well? And there's a report, our government discovery report, will come out later this month, which will produce all of this analysis in one simple document to try and understand what the root cause is, what the potential solutions are, and see if we can get our programme more closely aligned with those initiatives. But if we do all that, what is the purpose? What are we trying to do? Where do we think the market is going to go over the next 10 years? And so if you look at what government currently spends on construction of buildings, government as a whole spends around £15 billion every single year on buildings. This is new schools, hospitals, prisons, government offices, social housing. About £15 billion a year. Many different departments and agencies spend it, but it's about £15 billion. And this comes from the pipeline that government publish each year, the National Infrastructure and Construction Pipeline. And if you look at how that money is spent, currently, in 2020, the vast majority of it is delivered through traditional construction. So that we're talking here about your normal on-site trades that we've seen through the industry for hundreds of years. It does spend a bit of money on refurbishing existing facilities, buildings that have reached the end of their natural life, and perhaps upgrading them or repurposing them to meet future demands rather than build something new. And it spends a small amount at the moment on off-site solutions. Now, off-site is a term which means a lot of different things to different people. And actually, if you look at off-site construction in the UK as a whole, there's really a part of the market which is just doing traditional construction activities in a shed. It's not doing anything new or exciting, it's just doing the same thing in a different place. And we've seen some of the outputs of these types of modular solutions, which aren't really of the highest quality. They don't always meet performance criteria, they don't always deliver better air quality, they don't always deliver a better product at the end of the day. And it's been described by one of our partners as pimped up park homes. You know, and that's part of that market. There is, of course, a part of that off-site market as well, which is delivering proper, volumetric, high-quality, high-performing manufactured solutions, but they are not happening at scale, and they're not happening throughout different clients and different regions in a similar way. So it's quite difficult to build a case for building a capability to do something if clients are asking for the same thing in a slightly different way. So we think over the next 10 years that the amount of money that government spends on traditional construction will start to decline. We know that 5 government departments already have been announced as having a presumption in favour of off-site. That's defence, justice, education, health and transport, big spenders on government construction who are going to be spending and focusing their activities on can they deliver more off-site solutions. But I think in the future that we're going to see a growth in retrofit, which is really taking existing buildings and repurposing them to be net zero compliant. So rather than just refettling them at the end of their life and changing their use slightly, this is going to be trying to make these buildings future-proofed for a net zero world. So we'll see some of that refurbishment market being replaced by a retrofit market, and we'll see the largest growth in how we actually deliver manufactured solutions. And this is manufacturing solutions where we are talking about proper manufacturing processes, not off-site construction processes. But actually, if we're to deliver this vision, you know, we want to develop through our program, working with industry, a technical solution, but we need to have behind that an enabling framework. There is no point in us developing a utopian technical solution for manufactured buildings of the future if there's no one able to ask for them, to procure them, to specify them. There's no one in industry with the right capability or skills or appetite to deliver them. There's no means to fund them, to assure them, and there's no way of understanding the data that drives measurement and performance through the whole life. So it's really important as part of our program that we don't just focus on a narrow technical solution to deliver platform manufactured buildings, but we think long and hard about the right enabling framework, which has led us in the hub to start thinking about how we refocus our program ambition. Now, you may have seen a slide like this before, which we've used a number of times, but actually we've changed how we've organised ourselves within the hub to focus on 4 technical strands of work through our program. We have a focus on value, we have a focus on manufacturing, a focus on assurance, and a focus on digital. And I'll talk through what each of those mean in the context of our program and how closely they are related to each other, and how actually importantly it's not something we're able to deliver by ourselves in splendid isolation in the hub. It's a point of how are we going to work effectively with government, with clients, with industry and academia to deliver something that makes a big impact. As I said at the start, we are being measured not on have we spent the money we've been given and produced the reports that we said we produce. We're being measured on have we delivered impact? Have we actually made a difference? Have we changed the outcomes from the sector? And we're all aware of what Construction 2025 said, the 33 and 350s, 33% lower cost over the whole life, 50% faster, 50% less carbon, 50% change in the balance of trade. But we want to go further than that. We want to think about how do we deliver broader social impact? How do we support ambitions to level up, to rebalance the economy? How do we support the growing industrial capability and capacity in UK businesses? So our strands of work are now focused on value, manufacturing, assurance and digital. And of course, if we do that, we produce better buildings that perform better over their whole life, a better experience for users, lower energy in use, lower carbon in production, and all those other benefits. But actually we're doing that because as a nation, just in infrastructure alone, in schools, in hospitals, in the buildings, but also in transport and energy, as a nation we invest £65 billion a year in our infrastructure. £65 billion a year through public sector, private sector, regulated sectors. And the questions we should be asking ourselves is, if we're investing all of that money every single year, how should we strive to deliver better economic impact, better social impact, improve the environmental impact that we make as a sector? So there's an awful lot of thought has to go into how do we describe a way of working that delivers real impact rather than just delivers something that's a bit cheaper. We, as a programme, do not want to focus on anything that tries to do the same thing just a bit better. What we're trying to focus on, how do we deliver a better thing that works better for society, better for the economy, and better for the environment. So let me talk you through our 4 strands, the value, manufacturing, assurance, and the digital, and I'll start with the manufacturing. So if you think about one of the things that you may have seen come out of government at the end of 2018 was a consultation from the Infrastructure and Projects Authority that asked to call for evidence on a platform-based approach to design for manufacture and assembly. Not talking about volumetric or modular or normal offsite, focusing on, is there a way we can start to drive platform thinking? And one of the things we've done over the last 12 months is been working very closely with industry to try and develop a programme to demonstrate and prove a platform approach. And in fact, tomorrow, I think on this stage at 12:30, we'll be announcing who our partners are moving forward on this programme. So we've been engaging with a lot of businesses, and a lot of businesses are now going to be working with us to try and deliver a solution and develop a way, a technical approach that can start to deliver platform manufactured solutions at scale. And this isn't just because they might be higher quality, or they might be better value, or they might perform better over their whole life. It's that whole basket of measures. Are they supporting delivering broader social impact? Are they supporting decarbonising the built environment? The amount of waste we send to landfill, the amount of energy we use in production and operation. A whole basket of measures that we want the technical solution to demonstrate. Is it safe? Does it comply with regulation? And all these other factors. So what we're going to do is, through this programme, is develop some rules, some interface standards of how these things come together. And if you come here tomorrow, Mark will be speaking in some detail about our platform approach and how that works. And of course, we have to then think, what's the difference between traditional off-site construction, normal construction activities taking place in a shed, as opposed to manufacturing, which is using proper manufacturing processes. And really, to me, off-site needs physical standardisation, whereas manufacturing needs process standardisation. And we're going to be focusing quite hard on delivering processes that enable platforms and manufactured solutions to be delivered at scale. So we're talking about common integrated components and sub-assemblies that could work in a school or a hospital or social housing, rather than everything being different on every single project. So part of this approach is a technical solution with clear interface standards that describe how platforms will work. But actually, for that to work effectively, even if we can develop a utopian technical solution, it doesn't really change anything unless someone's able to buy it and someone's able to deliver it. So part of our enabling framework is really that work we're doing on value, on assurance and digital, and how we actually do that in a way, recognising the huge amounts of data we're going to be creating, managing, curating over the programme, how we do that in a way that gets security and security-mindedness into that process. But to get proper transformation in the sector, it's not just about a simple technical solution, it's about an enabling framework that allows it to be sustainable and make real change to the industry. So let me run through the 3 of these. So value, is really a way of working out and codifying what people say is important. If you listen to government, it says we value rebalancing the economy and levelling up. We value a path towards net zero. We value social impact. We value whole life performance. And the question you might ask is, well, how do you value it? How much do you value it? Because at the moment it appears to many people we speak to in industry that decisions seem to be taken on how cheap can I buy it and how much risk can I transfer to the supply chain. But the government's own rules talk about delivering wider social, economic and environmental value. They talk about measuring and making judgments on social impact, about skills investment, about decarbonisation. But at the moment there doesn't appear to be a clear way that government uses value as a way of making decisions on investment, on funding, on optioneering, on procurement, on delivery or on operation. So part of the work we're doing is working very closely with the Construction Leadership Council and their work on Procure for Value being led by Anne Bentley there. So we're working closely with a group from industry and the CLC to start developing a way of articulating value that clients can use so they can make a judgment based on, is it delivering social impact? Is it delivering net zero? Is it supporting rebalancing the economy? Because one of the things we've got to think about is when we talk about value, it means different things at the moment to different people. Some people see value just through the lens of cheap. Other people see value through the lens of, is it supporting a transition to a net zero economy? If you speak to number 10, is it supporting levelling up UK? So if we think about developing a broad manufacturing capability to deliver platform solutions here in the UK from the £15 billion we spend each year on government buildings, you can think about government has a route to channel some investment into projects that are happening in the Midlands or the North. So government has a role on where it puts the money, but we have a role on how that money is spent. If we are talking about investing where demand exists, there is still huge amounts of demand in London and the South East. So projects will still have to happen there. We'll still have to build housing, we'll still have to build schools, we'll still have to build hospitals in London and the South East. But if we've got a manufacturing capability based in industrial heartlands in the Midlands or the North, then we can service those projects, deliver economic value to the Midlands and the North for projects that are happening in the South as well. So if we build industrial capability and capacity in the UK, we can start to service projects not with an on-site itinerant project labour force, but with skilled, sustainable manufacturing jobs based throughout the UK in new economic heartlands. And of course, if we develop that capability, if we develop that capacity, then that helps us as a nation not to rely on importing substandard materials from parts of the Southeast Asia, for example. We want to make a value judgment based on the quality and the ethics of where something was produced. How much carbon was used in production? How much emissions were used in the manufacturing or creation process? How many jobs were created? We want to understand those things as part of our value framework. So our value framework is really important to try and set out what we should be valuing, what we should be measuring, and how we should be using that to make decisions. And of course that says, if we've got that in place, what are the right commercial models? What are the right business models? What are the right skills and capability we need in the future? Now, as an industry, we are woefully undiverse. So how do we actually help support to bring in and attracting new people into our industry? Not trying to describe unattractive jobs as being attractive when they're not. Let's try and make sure that as an industry, we better reflect the society we serve. So value is part of our enabling framework. And that's going to pick up around procurement, around valuation, around business models, around commercial models, and around skills. The second is around assurance. So if we've got manufactured products and solutions and sub-assemblies in place, how do we actually demonstrate that they're safe, they comply with regulations, they comply with standards? Because we're now talking about integrated components and assemblies, not individual components, dumb components now. So in a platform world, we have new sub-assemblies we need to test in 2D, in 3D, physically and digitally. We need to make sure we're able to measure how they perform in service, in operation. Are they meeting those requirements? Are they delivering the value that we said they were going to deliver in the first place? And of course, how do we actually make sure that the people providing these are competent to do so? How do we assure that the people making them, installing them, designing them are capable and behave in the right way? I would like to see us make more decisions based on the ethical behaviour of businesses, for example. And of course, one of the challenges at the moment with manufactured solutions, particularly in homes, is not all of the financial institutions offer products on it. You can't always get a mortgage on a modular or manufactured home. And that's because their spreadsheets, which were written in 1978, have a question in cell A1 that goes, is it traditionally built out of bricks and mortar? And if the answer is no, they say go away. So how do we work with people who provide insurance products, finance projects in the future to help them understand the benefits of investing in a manufacturer and supporting a manufactured solution? If it is more ethically produced, if it is lower carbon, if it has better social impact, why wouldn't ethical investors want to be part of that in the future? So value, assurance, and of course, digital. So the third strand in the enabling framework is a digital framework, which is really trying to work out what data we need to create and use throughout the whole investment lifecycle, not just the capital phase, the whole operational lifecycle, to understand how things should be measured, how they perform in service, but actually as a structure for how we create data, how we share data, how we secure data, how we curate data over that. So that requires us to work on the next round of the BIM standards, looking at an international programme to cement UK's world-leading position in this space, and working very closely with government and with the National Infrastructure Commission on a national digital twin programme. So we've talked about a technical solution around manufacturing and an enabling framework around value, around assurance, and around digital. But if you think about that enabling framework, the way we're writing it, the way we're working with industry, is recognising that as of tomorrow, we're not suddenly going to flip into a purely manufactured world. There'll be a transition, and there'll be parts of the industry that will remain traditional for a very long time. So it's important for us, when we're developing our framework, that we make sure our framework works for traditional methods of construction, for platform-based solutions, and for the modular volumetric solutions as well. Because there is no reason for us to value things differently depending on how they're constructed. If it's important to us to invest in skills, if it's important for us to decarbonise, we don't suddenly change our mind on whether that's important based on a contractor's delivery method. It's important for us to understand what value is, how we should drive it, how we should incentivise it, and how we should measure it. And that should apply irrespective of the delivery. So that leads us really then to how we've structured ourselves to try and respond to that challenge. Because in the past, you may have heard us describe our programme through the lens of what we were doing ourselves, what BRE were doing, what CDBB were doing, and what MTC were doing. But actually, we've flipped that now to start thinking about the impact our programme can achieve. So we're talking about how do we deliver impact in our value, in our manufacturing, in our assurance, and our digital strands. And of course, to do that, we need to have a focus not on delivering products and delivering reports, but actually measuring and driving towards impact. If that's the case, it's important we have people who have responsibility for that. So we are appointing 4 impact directors specifically to focus on those strands. 2 are in place at the moment. Trudy Sully, there, and Ron, who isn't here, are impact directors, and we're currently recruiting for the other 2, for assurance and digital. But crucially, that means, and we have recognised, that to meet the impacts that we are being asked to deliver, to support that transformation of the sector, to support improving the social, economic and environmental impact we make, it is not just about us doing work ourselves. So we are moving very much from a self-delivery model to a co-delivery model, which basically means we are going to do less of the work by proportion ourselves, and we're going to be engaging much more with industry on joint programs moving forward. It may be that certain activities we're doing, someone else has already done or is nearly finished. Why would we want to start that again or reinvent that wheel? Why don't we tap into some of the really good stuff that's happening and has happened out there and bring that into a jointly developed program to give it more impact? So we're moving very much from self-delivery to co-delivery. That has impacts for our team, who are then going to be not focusing on a report they thought they were going to write, but actually thinking about what impact can I make and how do I achieve that impact best. And that may be partnering with others. So hopefully from April this year, from next month, you'll start to see a change in how we engage with you. Not talking about what we are doing individually, but talking about what we can achieve collectively. So if you take one thing away from today, and if you take one thing away, you haven't really been paying attention, but if you only take one thing away, we are going to move to a co-delivery model moving forward. And of course, we're doing this for a reason. We are doing this so we can create buildings in the future that are higher quality, that are safer, that deliver more for owners, operators, users, and for society at large. Where we make judgments on value, not on cheapness. Where we use our digital solutions, where we use data properly, so we make sure we're delivering those outcomes. We're measuring value, we're assuring that we're meeting those requirements. We want to make sure in doing so, we're creating less waste. We want to be using less energy. We want to be using less carbon in our industry. And we want to start measuring it properly, not just what happens on site, what happens through the whole investment life cycle. I'm interested in carbon in production, carbon in delivery, carbon in operation. How do we use that to make judgments moving forward? I want to make sure our industry has a more diverse range of skills than it currently has. How do we make this an industry that people want to join, that feel attractive? What are the new skills we need to be working in our industry to make us effective? And of course, we want to do that in a way that helps businesses grow and be profitable. At the moment, the wafer-thin margins in the sector do not make it a hugely attractive investment proposition. So how do we do it in a way that delivers value for the public purse, delivers value for society, but makes a strong investment case for profitable, sustainable, innovative and growing businesses? So we're doing this for a reason, to have impact. And we measure impact not through the things we do, but the things that are enabled from how we can deliver them jointly in the future. So I'm now able to take questions.
So I'll start you off with a question. So you mentioned in-use value, essentially baking in value via a manufacturing process, which is an exciting proposition. What happens at end of life? I'm particularly interested in, do we offer a return to base principle? Because essentially we are creating a construction platform that we know outputs product and value at the end of its life cycle too. So some words on that, and then questions from the room, please.
Do you want me to start off while you wait for those?
Yep.
So when we talk about our value framework and how we use it to make decisions, those decisions are beyond the capital phase, and if you like, thinking about through life, which includes the operational and end of life. One of the things we think we can achieve through this program, through our technical solution, is we create greater flexibility in the buildings that we can flip their use potentially at some stage in the future. If we understand how components are put together, we understand how they can be taken apart, how they can be reconfigured. And part of that value decision is adaptability, flexibility for change use. And I know that the gentleman in the fifth row on the left-hand side is thinking about that very much from an educational estate point of view. What happens, how do we repurpose buildings as needs change over the life? So we're not building in redundancy, actually we're enabling flexibility of our future assets. It's about how do we deliver things that actually work throughout the whole life, and we make a value choice on whole life, not on how cheap we can buy it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was a very good presentation. My question is, can you describe what you think the future construction worker looks like and how the trades will operate in this new world?
Okay. Well, hopefully it won't look like me. So I think I think we'll see the construction sector have an awful lot more roles that do not exist on a construction site. So we'll see a lot more activities, a lot more trades and skills and professions working away from the site. Instead of just engineering disciplines, the traditional civil and structural and architectural professions, I think we'll see a lot more people involved in data, in visualization, in logistics, in assembly on site. And I think what that means as we move forward and we start thinking about future skills, it's not just the traditional professions, it's not just the traditional biblical trades. They will still be part of the sector, but they won't be as predominant as we've seen in the past. I think some analysis that CITB did was that for every, probably a bit out of date now, but for every £1 million that was being spent on a typical building project, that had about 13 people, full-time equivalents per £1 million. And of that 13, 90% were based on site. You start flipping that to a platform-based manufactured, instead of having 13 people per £1 million, you go to about 8 per £1 million, and of those 8, about 75% are based off-site. So the centre of gravity and the number of people will change. And we'll see in the future less demand, not no demand, but perhaps a decreasing demand for traditional trades like bricklayers, plasterers, painters and decorators, and so on, as many of those skills are retrained, redeveloped into assembly, manufacturing jobs that sit away from the construction side. So I think we'll see something that's much more data rich, something much more technology enabled, and something much drier in the fact that there's less wet trades and less activities happening on a construction site.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you so much. I have been following you for a while, following the UK for a while out of the Netherlands, and what I've seen at this event here today and yesterday is there's some kind of British-UK narrative coming up on, let's call it a roadmap to change, which was launched yesterday. But would that be an export product for the future as well, to get these smart people together and make up the story of UK BIM Alliance, Construction Innovation Hub, and Construction in Youth, for instance?
I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, if you look at the huge amounts of investment that are demanded in developed and developing nations to improve and upgrade their existing infrastructure, to build new infrastructure, and to decarbonise the built environment, we're talking about large levels of investment that need to be made. And it isn't just in new projects, it's in the existing state as well. So I think there'll be real opportunities for businesses that develop technical solutions, develop the ways of handling and managing data, AI, and all the other sort of tools, can really create an export market for themselves, because we have in the UK a funded programme at the moment. We've had lots of initiatives in the past, but this is the first time we've had a funded programme that's focused on delivering real impact. So if we have a funded programme and we're able to join up some of the thinking from government departments, from private sector clients, from academia and industry, we can start to develop not just a technical solution that can be manufactured or licensed, but actually the way we procure, the way we measure value, the way we assure, we provide confidence to finances, World Bank, wherever it's going to be, and the way we set out a digital framework that we can use. So big opportunities to export technology from what we develop here. But let's not pretend we have all the answers here in the UK, because we don't. We probably have most of the questions, but but part of our programme then is to work with you to see how do we actually develop answers that build something that brings a stronger investment case for businesses to develop a solutions, products, tools, systems, whatever, that are able to service a growing and stable UK market, but also be exportable into international markets where there's huge demand for those sort of services.
Thank you. Can we just get a show of hands for people who've got questions, if possible? Brilliant. If we can get a mic over to the lady at the front, please, next.
Keith, thank you for the presentation. I work for Lynch Plant Hire, so it's a plant hire company, and I am a data analyst. So we're quite small, I would say, but my question is, how do you get the buy-in from everyone in the industry on all levels? So we deal with manufacturers, we deal with clients, and we ourselves do the plant hire. But how do you get everyone to see the buy-in and the importance of innovation and data? Because it seems like we are very stuck in old way of thinking of let's just get it going with how we have been doing construction the past years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because that is one of the challenges we have to face if we're to deliver impact. And I'll tell you how we don't do it, if that's a starter. What we don't do is disappear to our own little world for 4 years, write a few reports, do some research and analysis, and present a utopian solution to the world and go ta-da, and expect people to do anything other than tell us where to get off. Actually, what we need to do is to sort of build that stronger narrative around what we should be valuing and get that as part of the wider description of how investment decisions are made in housing, in schools, in hospitals, in transport and energy infrastructure. But actually that itself is just an enabler. The way I think we'll get some change happening is by doing it. And that is not doing it everywhere at the same time, but it's actually looking at how we use some of the ability to use pilot projects, pathfinder projects, projects in the vanguard that we can test and demonstrate whether something works or not. And if we've got the data and the case studies and the information that sits behind that, we can build a stronger case that says, actually we've done a manufactured school that is net zero compliant. It's delivered better social impact, it's delivered better educational outcomes, it's been delivered in a way that supported local communities, it's helped levelling up, and so on. And then people will start to say, well, if you've done that already, it's less of a risk for me. Because at the moment, if you look around, and you'll see lots of exhibitors and speakers here, there are some really good things happening. But they're happening in isolated pockets, there's limited learning, there's limited joining up. So part of the opportunity we have through our programme is we've got some funding, so we can try some pilots and demonstrate and measurement, and we have the ability to communicate and engage, to say this has worked really well, why don't we try more of it, or I wouldn't try that, that didn't seem to deliver any real impact. But we're trying to focus on how do we maximise the impact, and we think about it through the lens of a customer journey, a user journey, an industry journey, a business journey, an investor journey. What makes it work for them, and how do we actually build a case that is something worth getting behind? So I think if we're investing billions and billions and billions and billions of pounds a year in trying to do the wrong thing a bit better, then I think we've failed. There's a real opportunity to start saying, actually, we want to decarbonise. We want to have better social impact. We want to reduce the amount of waste we send to landfill. We want to use technology in a way that delivers for society and business. How do we do that? And you can't solve that project by project, bottom up. You look at that pilot from the bottom, demonstrating, and a bit of strategy and policy and funding coming down from the government at the top. And then keep communicating and engaging. And again, co-delivering, because we're not going to come up with all the answers ourselves in the hub. We need to work with those stakeholders, those people who can help drive that journey forward.
Thank you. I believe there's a question and mic over in the back.
Hi, thank you for a really interesting talk. I'm sorry I came in sort of halfway through, so I don't know what you covered before, but I was just interested in, from what I've been hearing, it's really interesting to understand about the move towards modular building and, you know, sort of away from traditional trades and into the factory and getting the cost benefits of that. And then I wondered if you've looked at sort of future visioning because of climate change and the effect that will have on communities and the type of housing that they'll need, and whether or not houses will actually have to be movable, be floatable, be you know, whatever is needed for the future.
Okay, so there's two quick. I'll take the second part of that first, if I may. So we recognise that our job in the Construction Innovation Hub and the wider Transforming Construction Challenge is not necessarily to tell government and clients what to build, but to help them understand how to deliver their outcomes better. So if they're talking about adaptability and resilience of housing, then we can help them in how that may be achieved. But we're not making investment decisions on where projects going. What we're trying to do is help them make an informed choice. So if they value climate resilience or adaptability, then we can tell them how to deliver that in terms of a solution and what the right enabling framework is. The first part of your question was around talking about future skills and how the drive towards modular. Now, I don't think we're driving towards modular per se. What we're trying to do is drive towards ways of delivery that produce better impacts for society. Sometimes that might be a traditional construction approach, sometimes that might be a simple volumetric solution, and sometimes that will be a more advanced manufacturing solution. What we need to do is develop the right framework for people to make an informed choice on that. But we believe, and part of the analysis we have done, is that actually if we start valuing things through a whole life lens, we start thinking about through life quality, we think about how we can demonstrate building safety and operation, about how we can drive towards net zero, how do we support less waste, less carbon. We need to start thinking about the processes we use to create our buildings. And at the moment, the two largest things we send to construction site by volume, the The two largest things we send by volume to construction sites in the UK are waste and air. So if we think about actually thinking about how we can package up and take out some of that waste from our processes, some of that inefficiency in terms of emissions, then that's going to point to a particular solution that says actually if you want to deliver that better impact for society, for the environment, if you want to support the path to net zero, you start to limit your choices on the materials you use, on the processes you use, on the methods you use, and the way you set out your requirements to deliver them. So there will always be a need in this country for bricklayers. There'll always be a need for plasterers, but there'll be an increasing need for a different blend of skills in the workforce as well. Trained assemblers, logistics technicians, data wranglers, whatever it's going to be. Huge new skills coming in, which will start to replace perhaps some of those traditional skills. As people leave the workforce, they won't necessarily be replaced on a like-for-like basis moving forward. We're not going to change the whole industry overnight, but what we want to do is see a progression to solutions that deliver better social impact, better environmental impact, and better economic impact. And for that, we need to think. Our hypothesis is we need to develop a platform-based technical solution, but that needs to be backed up by our value framework, our assurance framework, and our digital framework as well.
Thank you. I can't see any more raised hands. Do we have any more questions? We do. There's a gentleman just at the back. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One of the things that, modern methods of construction have the potential to implement many of the changes that you've actually been describing, but there is one key part of the process which doesn't seem to be, shall we say, functioning as efficiently or to the right level. And what I would say is that until such time as design for manufacture and assembly becomes mainstream, the full potential of MMC will never be realised. Comment.
I agree. So at the moment, I think we're thinking about the terms modular, platform, offsite means slightly different things to different people. So a lot of people use modern methods of construction to mean anything that isn't traditional, isn't done on a site in the usual way. Actually, what we're seeing is a lot of traditional activities being taken off-site. And part of the challenge, as you rightly point out, is it's very difficult to retrofit a platform manufactured approach onto a project after it's been designed in splendid isolation. So part of the work that we're doing, and the reason we're doing it like this, is we're working with government and clients to help them articulate value in a way that says, I want to deliver things faster, I want less carbon in production, and all the other things I mentioned earlier. If we do that, that starts to say, well, actually, if I want to design this, I need to design it in a way that is scalable and workable. And you can't solve that every single project, every single time. So you need to develop a kit of parts, some standard rules, interface standards for how things come together to build a stronger case for why you would invest in platform technology or develop a solution that can be used in a school and a hospital. So government buys millions of doors every year. It buys millions of walls, millions of ceilings, millions of floors. But at the moment, the way they're specified, the way they're procured, the way they're valued is different, and it's different on almost every project. So if we want to build in design for manufacture, and it's not just design for manufacture and assembly, we should be designing for social impact, for decarbonisation, for rebalancing the economy, for better user experience, for safety, for quality, for air quality. All of those things are what we should be designing for, but clients need to ask for them and value them if they want people to come forward with those solutions. So at the moment, industry responds to exactly what clients ask them to do. So if clients ask them to do the wrong thing, or they value it very differently, then industry is not delivering those solutions. And if they do, their services aren't being bought. So we have to help governments, we have to help clients ask for things in a way that enable and unlock the capability to deliver this at scale. But you're quite right, it won't be solved backfitting into each project after procurement. We need to be thinking about this at the very inception of the project and use that moving forward and join up across multiple projects and programs, not just single project solutions.
Thank you, Keith. I don't think we've got any more questions, and we are just headed towards the end. Do we have time for one more question, hosts? Okay, if you have any more questions, I believe Keith and the rest of the Transforming Construction team will be on the stand for drinks as well as Q&A sessions. As I said at the start of this, it's probably the easiest job I've had over these 3 days. A round of applause for Keith, and please, if you've got any more questions, we promote to stand.